Recently, I've been playing through the Dishonored series of games, and probably my favourite mission from these games is one from Dishonored 2 called A Crack in the Slab. This takes place in a manor owned by a mine baron called Aramis Stilton, and you go here to hopefully find him and uncover the secrets of an occult ritual that took place here 3 years ago, involving the witch Delida Copperspoon, who at the start of the game co-leads a coup to overthrow your throne.
Your rightful empress has returned.
All hail the Empress Delilah, first of her name.
And whatever happened during this ritual drove the once flourishing manor into an eventual state of disrepair and ruin, where all the rooms have been smashed to pieces, with nature completely taking over what was once a thriving residence, and it is all backed by an eerie soundtrack of a slow beating drum. Eventually, you come across a convenient hole in the ceiling and jump down into a room where Stilton appears to be locked up, only to find that he has completely lost his mind and doesn't even acknowledge your presence. But then suddenly, the outsider appears, who paces around for about a minute, eventually giving you an item called the timepiece.
Take this. Imagine it's a kind of timepiece.
And then vanishes into thin air. And this item, the timepiece, probably has one of the more interesting mechanics I've come across in any game, as it allows you to travel to the past just before the events of the ritual that ran the manor to ruins, and then lets you travel back to the present again. This means you can basically jump between two separate versions of the manor, enabling you to overcome obstacles that only exist in one point in time. For example, allowing you to escape this room. But not only that, it also means you can hide and escape from the guards who only exist in the past version of the manor, as you can jump back to the present, run around where they are in the past, and then jump back to the past manor again to see them getting very befuddled over this person that keeps vanishing from right in front of their eyes.
What's going on here?
Where are you hiding,
She can't have gone far.
But how do you know it's safe to jump between the two times if there could be a guard or some other enemy right there in the other version of the manor? And this is where things get very interesting, as the timepiece also has the mechanic that allows you to actually see the other version of the manor before you jump there. So when you're in the past, you can preview the present, and when you are in the present, you can preview the past. And this kind of blew my mind when I first played this, as I had just never seen this kind of effect done before in any game I had played in the past. And they did it literally just for a single mission of the game. So this got me wondering about how they made this effect, as I just wanted to see if I could try to recreate it myself. And I've got a few ideas about how they may have gone about it, but the most likely way I could think of is to use something called a stencil buffer. But what exactly is that? Before we can talk about what that is, it's important to understand the concept of a buffer in the world of graphics, and we can start off with the most basic one. The colour buffer. So when we render anything using a graphics API, such as this dragon here just spinning around on some floating islands, the typical result is a two-dimensional coloured image that you can see here, being updated about 60 times every second. But before the image actually reaches the window, it is first being rendered off-screen to an area of video memory called the colour buffer, which is just a fancy way of saying a 2D grid of colour values that represents the final frame, and this is what eventually gets drawn onto the window. But when the scene is being rendered, how do we make sure that the far away objects are not being rendered in front of the closer objects? This is where something called the depth buffer is used, which, like the colour buffer, is a grid of values in video memory, but rather than colour values, it's a grid of numbers that represents the distance that parts of the scene are from the camera. This is then used by the underlying graphics driver to do depth testing, which is just as it sounds, using these values to determine what should be drawn in front of what. And this can also be turned off, but as you can see, this makes the scene look very confusing and a little bit nightmarish, so this isn't normally done. But there are cases where this can be useful, one of which we will come to a little bit later on. So anyways, now that we know a bit more about graphics buffers, we can finally go back to the stencil buffer, which is what they likely used to create the timepiece looking glass effect in the Dishonored mission. So in the real world, a stencil is usually a flat object with a shape cut into it, that when placed onto a surface and painted over, the shape gets printed onto that surface. And in the world of computer graphics, it's a very similar concept, where you can render an object to first create a stencil, and then you can use the stencil to control where other objects get rendered onto the window. And just like the depth buffer, it again is stored in video memory as a 2D grid of numbers that covers the window. To see how this works, let's just say we want to take the spinning dragon from earlier and use it as a stencil when rendering the rest of the scene. The first step is to enable reading and writing to the stencil buffer and configure it such that when rendering objects, it writes 1 to the corresponding position within the buffer. We can then render the dragon as normal, but thanks to the prior setup, it also creates a stencil mask within the buffer. Then finally, we can configure it such that rather than writing to the stencil buffer itself, objects are only rendered where the stencil buffer is equal to 1, and then we can just render the islands as normal. So now when we run this, the scene is only being rendered where the dragon stencil was written to, creating the effect of a dragon-shaped portal through which we can see the world. And just as a fun bonus fact about portals, stencil buffers were used as part of the technique for creating them in the Portal series of games, where the scene visible through them is being masked by an oval-shaped stencil in the stencil buffer. Anyways, going back to the code, you may have also noticed that when setting up the stencil buffer, the depth test was also being disabled. And this is one of those cases mentioned earlier where disabling it is actually useful, as if it were enabled, we wouldn't be able to see anything through the dragon at all, making the entire stencil effect pointless, hence it must be disabled. And something else we can also do is disable writing to the colour buffer, such that only the stencil buffer is written to when rendering the dragon, making it completely invisible when rendering the scene through it. In addition, we can also use the stencil buffer for the opposite effect, so rather than rendering the scene where the stencil buffer was written to, we can render it where the stencil buffer was not written to, creating a dragon-shaped cutout in the world where nothing gets rendered. And then we can even swap between the two effects on the fly as well, which you can see being done here. At this point, you can probably see how all of this relates back to the timepiece effect from the Dishonored mission, where the chrono shards of the item are very likely being rendered to the stencil buffer, allowing one version of the scene to be rendered on the outside of them, and the other to be rendered within. So to recreate this effect, I first need to make my own version of the timepiece, where part of it can be rendered to the stencil buffer such that a different version of the same scene can be rendered through it. So I modelled a simple spiral handle with a circular portal window in the centre of it using Blender, where the circular window can be rendered separately such that it can be used as a stencil. And after updating the stencil rendering code to use this rather than the dragon, it ended up working out pretty well, as we now have a device where the view of the world can be swapped between both the inside and the outside of its window. At this point, the final piece to finish the effect is to create a second version of the same scene, such that when the current world is being rendered through the device window, a different version of it can be viewed on the outside that's in a bit of a state of ruin, where a lot of the columns holding up the structures have fallen, and the grass has long since withered and died, much like the present time version of Stilton's Manor. And with the new model loaded in, we now have two versions of the same scene, where one can be seen through the device window and the other can be seen on the outside, where the two versions can be instantly swapped between each other on the fly. And with this in place, there is just one more thing that can be done to really bring this all together to make the effect complete. So going back to the Dishonored mission, you can see that when I jump between the two versions of Stilton's Manor, the transition is not instantaneous, but rather there's a very interesting transition effect that takes place before you get jumped to the other version of the manor. And this is the effect that can make our recreation of the timepiece complete. So the best way to really see what's going on during this transition is to simply slow it down. And by doing this, you can see that there's actually several different effects happening all at the same time, being combined together to create the final transition effect. So first of all, the view gets zoomed out a bit, making everything seem a little bit further away. Second of all, the scene around the edges of the screen become very warped, which can especially be seen by looking at the sword, which has become very curved. And thirdly, all the colours get washed away into a grayscale effect before you finally get jumped to the other point in time. And as previously mentioned, all three of these effects are being combined together to create the final transition effect. So when it comes to recreating it for ourselves, we can do it in very much the same way, by implementing the effects one at a time, starting off with the most simplest of the three, the zoom out effect. And the reason why this stage is the simplest is because we can control how much the scene is zoomed in or out by simply adjusting the camera's field of view, where increasing this will make the scene appear more zoomed out. But as this effect needs to run alongside the other stages, I created the class called the Distortion Warp effect, which will make it easy to control them all at the same time, where the effects can be triggered by calling a start function when we want the effects to begin, and then an update function can be called each frame to step the effect until it's finished. Anyways, to make it easier to test these effects for now, I created a slider to control the progress of the transition. And by setting a value between 0 and 1 using this, the field of vision can be interpolated to be between the usual value and a target value, which as you can see gives the illusion that the scene is zooming out. So now that the zooming out effect is complete, the next stage to try is the one where the scene appears to bend towards the edges, and this can be done by using post-processing shaders. This is where the scene is first rendered to an off-screen texture, which enables you to write shader effects to it as if it were a regular image, before finally drawing it to the window. And this is a similar idea to loading an image file into something like paint.net, where you can then apply various effects to it. In this case, the shader is applying an effect to the image called barrel distortion, which effectively pulls the edges of the image outwards, making the view of the scene closer to the edges of the window appear curved. And similar to the zooming effect, this is also being interpolated using the slider for now, which can be seen working here. And that brings us to the final stage to complete the transition, which is the grayscale effect that drains the colour from the scene, which is another example of a post-processing effect. For this we compute the average of the red, green and blue channels for each pixel of the image, which gives us a target value. As an example, this pixel has the RGB values 85, 50, 45, which produces a dark red. But if all of the RGB channels share the same value, it becomes a shade of grey. So by taking the average of the three channels, which in this case is 60, we can interpolate the RGB values towards this number to grey it out. And by doing this across the entire image, all of the colour gets drained away, and when combined with the other effects, it produces the distorted grayscale effect, just like the one from the timepiece in Dishonored. The only thing left to do now is to remove the slider and instead start the transition effect when I press a key. And if we look back at the Dishonored version once again, this happens across two stages, where firstly the effect takes over the entire screen, and then secondly it rapidly pops back to normal. So the first thing I tried was a simple timer setup, where I reset the timer at the start of the transition and then apply a linear interpolation to all of the effects at the same time across a single second, and then do the reverse, where all of the effects are undone across another second before finally swapping the scenes over. So now when I press the key to trigger the transition, it looks like this, which is not the most exciting effect in the world, especially when compared to the effect in Dishonored, but it creates a good base to improve it further. The first step for this is to adjust the timings, such that the second stage of the transition is a lot faster than the first one, and secondly, rather than using linear interpolation, we can use an easing function to control how rapidly the effect takes place over a length of time. And I tried out quite a few of these, and the one that worked the best in the end was the ease out circ, or ease out circle, which starts out the transition very rapidly but then slows it down towards the end. So with all this in place, if we now trigger the effect, we can see it's now very close to the one in the game, which I feel means we have finally successfully recreated the timepiece effect from the Dishonored mission. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and feel free to let me know in the comments below if there's any other effects or interesting mechanics from games you would like to see me try to recreate. One effect I'd love to try is the portals from Portal, which were briefly mentioned earlier, but I'd love to hear your thoughts anyways, just in case there's anything else that could be interesting to do as well. So anyways, once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.